All right. Welcome, everyone, to the final scheduled part of a three-part installment that we have been calling the Nerdy 30. That's right, the Nerdy 30. Really exciting session today. I'm really pumped about it. But before I introduce our guests, I want to provide some context. If you've been watching, you know what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyways for any first-time viewers. After I intro our guests, which will be happening soon, I'm going to put a timer up on the screen counting down from 30 minutes. At the end of 30 minutes, an alarm will go off, and at that point, the discussion is over. Anything left to be said will either be recapped in the blog or covered in an additional session if there is enough demand. Also, throughout this session, if there are any questions about anything that the speakers are talking to, feel free to drop those in the comments. Throughout the session, we may throw one of those up on here, or at the end of the session, we can recap those. So just send those on through. Again, this is the third part in the Nerdy 30. Session one was a couple of weeks ago with Rusty Newton, who is a learning aficionado here at Expel, and he taught all about how to learn and how to study for cybersecurity certifications. That on-demand recording is getting a ton of traction on our YouTube channel. Highly recommend checking that out. Last week, we sat down with a couple of our SOC directors, Ray Pugh and Ben Brigida, to talk about how to measure a SOC. And then today, right now, we have Jason Rebholz from Evoke Security and special guest Joe Marchetti from CoStar Group, who will talk about how AI can help overcome cyber burnout. Again, this is going to be a very practical discussion talking about where we are today and maybe where we want to be tomorrow. And so sort of plotting the way forward, if you will. I'll say this, you can get the on-demand recordings to the prior sessions at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/expelsecurity, or you can go to expel.com/resources. Actually, the top two resources on that page are the on-demand recordings for the first two sessions. Towards the top, actually, the third resource on that page, you'll also see a report. You will see let me share this, the 2025 Enterprise Cybersecurity Talent Index report. This report is free to you. You don't even have to give us your information. Believe it or not, it is completely free. And we'd love for you to take a look at it. The inspiration for this session actually came from this report. In the report, we assessed over 5,000 open cybersecurity job postings to see common trends or threads, both in the content of those job descriptions and in the number of applicants for those jobs, how long those jobs have stayed up, et cetera. And there's really some interesting insights and observations around the state of the industry and the real or perceived cybersecurity talent shortage that we hear a lot about. And two themes that popped up actually were chapter 2 here around burnout and mental health and job descriptions in an industry rife with burnout. Or in the report, as we like to call it, cyber strain. I feel like that's a better encapsulation of what we're dealing with specifically as it comes to the cybersecurity industry. We also had a chapter, I believe it was chapter 5 right here, about AI and the prevalence of AI within job descriptions. So again, highly recommend checking out that report. You can check it out at expel.com/get the best security candidates, or you can go to expel.com/resources. Again, let me pop this into the chat here. Let's see, into the chat. Can I do this? It's not letting me do this. That's all right. Check out expel.com/get the best security candidates to find out more about the report. All right. Without further ado, it's time to introduce our guests. I'm going to invite in Joe. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you. And Jason. Hey, Jason. Welcome.
Hey.
All right. So a couple of quick intros here. I'm going to intro Joe first. Joe Marchetti is the Vice President of Cybersecurity at CoStar Group, where he blends strategic foresight with hands-on technical depth, leading initiatives that don't just defend, but evolve the organization's security posture. Joe has 25 years of experience in systems and cybersecurity engineering roles including 9 years in the defense sector where he engineered, secured, and operated DoD data centers. That sounds important, Joe. He holds an MBA from Georgetown University, an MS in Information Systems from Virginia Tech University. Go Hokies. Fred House, VP here at Expel Over Detections, is also a Hokie. And bachelor's degree in computer information technology from Purdue. Boilermakers. Let's go. All right. Welcome, Joe. Hey, tell us a little bit about CoStar Group.
Sure. Yeah. For those of you who have not heard about CoStar Group, we are the company behind all of the world's top leading real estate websites. CoStar is our flagship product, but the general audience might not be familiar with. So the sites that you might be more familiar with would be apartments.com, homes.com, land.com, loopnet.com, etc. Collectively, those sites bring in well over 100 million visitors a month. But that large internet presence also brings in some unwanted visitors, and that's what keeps our team challenged and engaged.
Yeah, I can imagine you got your hands full. That's great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for telling us about that. And last but not least here, Jason Rebholz was born and raised in incident response, where he spent over a decade responding to cyber attacks from nation states, hacktivists, and financially motivated criminals. After hanging up his IR hat, he was the CISO at Corvus Insurance for 4 years, where he ran internal security while implementing innovative ways to protect tens of thousands of policyholder networks. He recently launched Evoke Security, where he is focused on helping companies secure AI in their environments. Jason, hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about Evoke Security.
Yeah, so we're really digging into just the innovations that are happening with AI and just the rapid adoption that is starting to happen within companies. Somewhat different paces depending on who you talk to. But really what we're focused on is how do you securely deploy AI, whether that's tools that you're building yourself or third-party applications, so that you can try to avoid the issues that are naturally going to pop up with new technologies.
Very good. Very good. Welcome both. I'm excited about this session, and with that said, I think it's time to dig in. Let's start the timer up here. All right. Very good. All right. So again, in this report that I mentioned earlier on cybersecurity hiring that was just published by Expel, burnout, or as we refer to the term in the report, cyber strain, has once again taken center stage as a very real problem that often doesn't get enough attention. Jason and Joe, you've spent quite a bit of time in the industry. What does burnout look like from your experience, and what's driving it? Anybody want to take that one first?
Yeah, Joe, you want to lead off?
I'm happy to. So what does burnout look like? The general feelings that I see are, there's a high volume of work that needs to get done, usually met with some scaling challenges. It might look like feelings of helplessness or powerless in cybersecurity, or it could be that you always have to know everything, and you sometimes start to feel like an imposter. If you think about all of those, most of them involve humans, oftentimes humans on both sides of the equation. And so it's not just the humans, it isn't always just the humans on the burnout side that we have to focus on for solving, and there may be some automation or AI solutions that might help solve this. In terms of actual, examples that I've sort of observed over the years of where burnout emerges from, I think the classical example in cybersecurity would be in a SOC, particularly smaller SOC shops that are standing up the SIM for the first time, and they're able to generate way more alerts than what they're able to handle. And thankfully, MDR partners such as Expel have kind of solved for that sort of problem. One other classical example I would say is anyone who has had to run Nexpose or Nessus over the years from a vulnerability management standpoint has known intimately that you run the scans. In 1 month, you produce a long list of findings of vulnerabilities. Then you have to go and chase down the owners of those vulnerabilities and try and get them to patch. And by the time you make any progress on holding those meetings and getting them to start patching, Another month passes, new CVEs come out, your scan data is invalid, and it just continues a cycle of bigger backlog building, and you're constantly chasing down vulnerabilities.
Yeah. Is that something you've seen as well, Jason?
Yeah, it's a really interesting feeling. I've experienced it myself, and I've seen it firsthand in my teams as well. And it's interesting because when you're looking at cybersecurity, I think a lot of people in the field are very mission driven, right? They're called to this idea of wanting to protect a company, protect data. It's something that drives a lot of people to jump into the field. Now, the challenge with that, though, is as Joe is pointing out, and Joe, I think you're spot on here. It's like it's a never ending task, right? And so I always would tell people like this: you don't win in cybersecurity. It's like a zombie apocalypse, right? The game is survival, right? And so the challenge with that becomes, you're basically filling this jug with water, and it just overfills, right? And so it's like you never can actually get the water out, almost like, you're in a lifeboat and you're trying to just get water out of there to try to maintain the status quo. And so there's just this endless stream of vulnerabilities. It might be asks from the business. And when you're not always in that position where you can directly resolve them yourself, you have to work with other teams to influence them. You get kind of stuck in the middle there. And so, how does this manifest itself? It's just this feeling of pressure that you have to get things done, and you're driven to do that, but you can never really get the traction that you need to keep pace with everything. And so, for me personally, I had this when I was in incident response at some point where it was just the constant calls to be online at any hour of the night. And I had physical manifestations where I was literally breaking out in hives because I just couldn't keep up with all of the issues that were popping up there. And so, I see that with my team members where it starts a little bit earlier, where it's just like they start to get disconnected, right? It starts with just like the grumblings in the team where it's just like, oh, what's the point? Nobody's going to listen to us anyway. And those start to manifest in behaviors. And just like this feeling of like you're just no longer in control. And ultimately, that's what will lead to some of these physical manifestations. And so it's something where you have to recognize early on what those signs are. And as security leaders, it's really getting the systems in place to try to help the team and yourself. It's kind of like an airline. It's like, put your own mask on first, and then put the mask on others to really get yourself in that position where you can implement the right change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think, anybody in any profession, sometimes, they have the thought that crosses their mind of, am I really making a difference out there? And I feel like as security professionals, to your point, Joe, as soon as something is fixed, there are 5 other things that need to be fixed. And so it's this constant cycle and churn of am I moving the needle at all here? It's a 1 step forward, 10 steps back situation. And it's just defeating, it's just defeating. Joe, you've done a lot with automation integration. Automation, I feel like, is sort of the first step in a way towards what we're talking about in terms of AI, getting there. Where do automation efforts end, and where does AI begin?
That's an interesting question. As in some of the examples that I mentioned, you can start to solve for some of those challenges through better automation. And automation usually starts with documenting the process and ensuring that process is repeatable over time. And then from there, you can start to sort of automate. So where does it sort of begin and end? I think that's somewhat to be determined, but I do see a lot of hype around AI, and behind the scenes, what some people might call AI may not be AI quite yet. An example that I've seen, chatbots have been prevalent in operations on ops teams for quite some time. We had chatbots back when I was doing systems engineering. We have chatbots now today in security. But largely the chatbots that I've been using and exposed to They're just an interface to a series of pre-scripted actions that we've built on the back end. And so, and the error handling is very limited, and so you have to pass in the precise parameters to the chatbot in order for it to execute the precise actions that it's been scripted to do. From an outsider's perspective, that could sound like AI because it's sort of a bot doing work, but it's not. It's no different than any other sort of automation or scripting that we've done in the past. It's just we're doing it through a chatbot interface.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead,
Joe,
Jason.
I'm curious. Something you said really stood out to me around just documenting the processes first and the repetitive tasks. And so I'm curious, how do you spot those on your teams? Because that's that's like the starting point, is really define where the opportunities exist. So, like, do you have any tips and tricks on how you can spot those, within the team, and show you where you can lean into automation?
Yeah, so if I go back to the vulnerability management example, in some ways it was easier when we only had to worry about a Nessus or Nextcode. But now, the amount of vulnerability scanners out there and tools across the security ecosystem that are producing vulnerabilities, whether they're misconfigurations or missing patches, have grown tremendously. So now we're faced with coalescing this large list of vulnerabilities against then a even larger list of people who are responsible for them, right? And so as we've been doing that over time, sort of the same process starts to emerge, is taking information, taking findings, identifying the owner, and passing that information to them in a timely manner so that they actually act on it. So from our standpoint, that was largely human driven, and we tried to kind of hire our way out of it. But even as you add people, the new people get burnt out and bored of doing that sort of exact same thing. Mm-hmm. But it's easy to kind of replace the people because the process is well trodden, and so they just need to follow the process. But anyone who's kind of found themselves in that type of role knows that it's not the most exciting role to be in. So we've tried to automate most of those functions in that type of an example, right? So we're extracting the vulnerability findings from each of those sources. We're programmatically calculating what's important, and then we're also we've automated the action to create the work, the security bug issues for the dev teams, DevOps teams, the systems teams, the IT teams to remediate it, right? So we're removing ourselves from that sort of process entirely, and we've found pretty big wins in terms of avoiding that as a source of burnout on our team.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like it's taking that engineering mindset and trying to apply that into the day to day, right? Like this is like, I feel like the DevOps, hero story here is, where are we spending a lot of time manually doing something, and especially if there's documented processes. And when you said that, basically you tried to hire your way out of it, right? Like that to me is like a really strong signal that, hey, like, and this might be a double-edged sword today, right? But it's like, you have companies that are saying, hey, before you go and try to get more headcount, is this something, I'm not going to say that AI can replace, let's just start with automation. Like, is this something you can automate to help lift that burden? And so I think there's just like that comfort that people get with, okay, we have a manual process and, we have to just follow it because we made this years ago. But if you step back and take that engineering mindset of like, are these repeatable tasks? Can we just put some basic code together to help drive that automation forward? To me, that's the area where you can get a lot of return on investment of just saying, hey, you know what? You don't have to do this menial task anymore. Because that, to me, like that is one of the main sources of burnout too, is just like having to do a lot of just basic administrative tasks that can easily be outsourced to code. Yeah, if you can identify those proactively, and I would love to see just like OKRs or team objectives. That's how we used to do it on my teams, where we'd figure out what those pain points are and go, okay, if this is where we're spending the most time today, and we feel confident that we can save ourselves times in the future, let's put a project together and plan ahead for it so that we can try to automate as much as we can to help lift some of those repetitive tasks which become a burden.
Jason, I know you are. We've been talking about automation, and we're gonna move into AI, kind of practically what we're seeing out there right now. Obviously, there's a lot of hype. My first run-ins with AI and cybersecurity, we were actually demoing on the floor. A company I used to work for, not Expel, demoing on the floor this new chat bot, Joe, to your point. And the most valuable thing it could do was restate the alert that we were looking at in the voice of a pirate, which some would argue is helpful. But anyways, hype aside, so get through the hype. Jason, I know you're in talks with security leaders. I know you're keeping an eye on the pulse of AI in the market. Are there areas where AI has meaningfully helped reduce noise, improve workflows, all of the kind of stuff that we've been talking about so far?
Yeah, I would say the areas that I've seen the biggest return on time for people is around documentation, right? And it seems so just blatantly obvious when you think about where ChatGPT is today, and potentially how a lot of people use it. That's kind of the key thing, right? And so you see a lot of companies that are automating reporting. In some of these workflow automations, they'll bring in some basic reasoning capabilities. Like this is where I think more companies are trying to experiment. And I'm going to put a big asterisk next to this because there's still a lot of questions around how reliable it's going to be. But the documentation side and being able to summarize, that seems to be the area where people are just saying they're getting the most time benefit. Now, the other area, if and again, I think the jury is potentially still out, just on like the vibe coding area, right? We were talking before on some of the engineering side, right? And the automation, just being able to get some of these coding co-pilots in the hands of, we're going to say qualified people, those who have a basic understanding of coding practices. That's been a pretty big time saver. The asterisk on that is, while some of the code development time is going down, there still is a lot of time spent on the review of that code. And so I usually just will say it's best for prototyping, but if you ever want to go into production or anything there, that's when you need to do a lot of just deeper review, peer reviews, all of those things. But you're finding just a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and that is starting to add up across teams now.
Joe, anything you want to add to that? I mean, it followed up on, it seemed like we talking about documentation and things like that. Anything to add to Jason's point there?
Yeah, I agree with Jason. The democratization of like the tribal knowledge within a team the AI has tremendously helped with that, right? And it's effectively just a better unified search platform for any team that's tried to start using Copilot and then maybe connecting Copilot to a few other sources of data wherever your sort of source of truth or knowledge base is, which often lives in a chat platform, lives in email, lives in a wiki, might live in structured documentation like a SharePoint site. It can aggregate all of that in a easy interface for people to use, right? So we've seen a lot of that help. You can also use it to enrich alerts, right? And obviously Expel uses Ruxy tremendously to enrich alerts and do all of the pre-analysis as soon as something fires. So I've seen very helpful use cases there. On the sort of coding side, yes, it certainly helps developers. We have lots of developers here at CoStar, so I'm aware of those examples. But on the like KQL side, like custom query language, or if you're a Splunk query language expert, or now a Wiz query language expert, right? AI has helped tremendously. There is no big obstacle for anyone to go in now and run something. And so, I would credit Wiz as doing a nice job in their product, whereby you don't have to know everything. You can just pass in normal conversation to do a search, and then it'll generate the query for you. Certainly, someone in my own position, I appreciate that, because every day it seems I'm getting more and more abstracted from sort of hands-on, but I can quickly come up to speed and I can execute any query I want inside of our sim, thanks to these sort of AI chat assistants.
I can imagine that is tremendously helpful for you, Joe, just to get that high level view whenever you need it. What about let's flip the coin over, Joe. Talk to me about the risks. Like, what are the risks that you see of maybe poorly implemented AI tools?
Yeah, so I would say it's pretty early in terms of calling out risks with AI, and so anecdotally, two that come to mind are that you may have seen in the headlines would be McDonald's and Chipotle. Chipotle said that AI has dramatically improved their ability to hire people, whereas McDonald's created an issue for themselves in inadvertently leaking a bunch of sensitive data of all their applicants. But so the risks that I'm concerned about in terms of adopting AI in ways that are not as we already described, which are just sort of an producer of information for ourselves to consume, but actually having them in line doing something is where I'm more concerned about. And that stems from my experience in automating things. I've been a part of teams that have written well over 10,000 lines of PowerShell. And it can do amazing things. But I've also seen a unexpected character passed into a script have devastating consequences and cause full-on outages. And so, if you think about putting AI in line, or even going back to a simple chatbot that I discussed earlier, if you pass in that wrong parameter or it interprets something differently, you're going to get a wildly different result than you expected, and it could have larger consequences than you're expecting or can deal with.
Absolutely. Are you seeing that as well, Jason?
Yeah, this is obviously something I'm digging into very, very deep, and that what Joe just said, like, that is my main concern, right? If you look at the risks today, the biggest risks are really around like small scale data issues. It's amplifying a lot of the security misconfigurations we have today. So take an enterprise search tool, for example. Now with some of the tools that are coming out and getting deployed, one overshared file that has sensitive information is now potentially accessible via a prompt, right? And so it's making it a lot easier for people to surface the things that have always been there, but it was really difficult and manual to identify before. So that's kind of the current state. Where I really see things going, though, and how long this takes is anyone's guess. But when you start to incorporate agents into business critical tasks and functions, that's outsourcing the logic to something you don't really quite understand how it's going to act every single time. Now, there are ways that you can help put some guardrails literally around that, but it's really around how much trust are you going to give to that agent, and what impact is that going to have, and like can you basically get comfortable with the fact that there's a black box system that's going to be making potentially some basic decisions or some very important decisions in your organization. And now it can go down any number of routes from there. And so, what does that look like in the future? It really just depends how far you lean into it, right? If you have a business critical function that is tied to a specific agent or series of agents, and one of those agents goes rogue, thinking that it's trying to accomplish its mission, but generating fake test data or generating false outcomes, whatever it might be, because it's just trying to accomplish its mission. Now you put yourself into a weird spot. And this just happened, I think it was last week, where one of the major AI platforms that's out there, you had some new founder who was trying to vibe code a new application, and the agent went and deleted the production database on him. And so, like, that's a really terrifying example, and maybe not the best one because it's somebody just vibe coding, but it's those types of unintended consequences that can pop up when you're rushing too quick to implement agents in the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, in our report, we noticed a disconnect. It's really interesting. When we started looking at these job descriptions, we noticed that AI was a requirement, at least according to the job descriptions for the frontline roles, a lot of those. But when we looked at director level, roles, we didn't see any mentions of AI. What is leadership's involvement here when it comes to AI from your perspective?
Yeah, so I firmly believe that leadership needs to be coming at this from a place of knowledge, right? Right now we're seeing a lot of businesses just toss a directive over the fence saying, "Hey, like you have to adopt AI," and it's not a smart way to do it, right? So from a leader's perspective, it's really about one understanding how the technology works, where does it work well, and where does it not work well, and start to define the strategy. And part of that, if not maybe the most important part, is really get clear on what problems you're trying to solve. So going back to the conversation Joe and I were having before, and like just like finding what these manual processes are, it's taking that concept and really identifying what are the problems and which of those problems are well suited for AI to solve. And you have to have a good understanding of AI to be able to do that effectively. And so this is where it should be a top down and a bottoms up. Let the team test out AI and like see how it can help with their workflows and some of the other aspects of their jobs. But really, it's how do you give that support from that leadership position to really basically like maximize the bets, right? And so that's not in my mind, that's the job of the leader, is saying, these are the areas I think we're going to have the best return on investment by leaning into AI. Have the conversation with the team and get their bottoms up feedback on that, but then go and set that direction in a smart way where you're not going to just be throwing spaghetti against the wall, seeing what's going to stick.
Joe, to piggyback off what Jason just said, one of the things that I loved about our prep session last week when we first started talking about the subject matter was that we came to the table with an idea of what we wanted to talk about, and you said, "Hey, what if instead we kind of practically sit down and talk about the roadmap to implementing AI?" Because of exactly what Jason just said. Jason, had a good point. List out the practical use cases and kind of move in that direction. And it seems like that's where your head is as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, going back to the lead in to Jason there on um, AI requirements appearing in sort of job postings. I think there's a feeling in the industry that among a lot of teams and leaders that you've got to adopt AI. It's got to be now, or you're going to miss the boat, right? Anyone that's familiar with a product curve knows that there's a chasm that needs to be crossed, right? And perhaps in the general purpose AI, we've crossed that chasm, but I'm not sure we've crossed it in security yet. In terms of like security centric AI solutions. So I am very, very wary or cautious. And actually, anecdotally, I went and looked at our job recs. While we actually use AI in certain use cases and we're responsible for securing AI that our development teams are incorporating into our products, it would just be sort of marketing FUD if I put that in there, right? And I would be discrediting my own team on their ability to learn new things
Sure.
And adopt new things. So in any case, when we're looking to can AI help? What are we looking for, right? And I would encourage everyone to always step back and ask yourself, what are you trying to solve for, right? There's plenty of companies out there that are trying to peddle a solution to a problem that you didn't approach them with. They're just trying to retrofit their solution into your environment, right? So always start with what are you trying to solve for? What are the problems you have? And those are your requirements. And then when it comes to adopting AI, what is the tolerance for errors in whichever way you want to use it, right? So another example where I've seen it work well would be in abnormal securities product, which they tout now. When they first launched, I remember them just being marketed as abnormal security. Now it's abnormal AI. But we had a specific problem we were trying to solve for, and the error tolerance there is relatively well trodden in that if you ran Mimecast, Proofpoint, or any mail security gateway, right, what's it going to do? It's going to quarantine mail. If the mail didn't get delivered, you're going to need to release it from a quarantine, right? And then you can kind of tune the controls from there. So in a use case like that, where there might be tolerance for errors, then it might make sense. But in other use cases where there's zero tolerance for errors, it just isn't there yet.
Absolutely. So bringing the plane in for a landing here. What I'm hearing, Joe, is a healthy path forward to adopting AI is just be very thoughtful about where you roll it out in the areas of your business. Let me throw it out to you guys. We got 1 minute and 40 seconds left. Anything to add on to that? What does the healthy path look like to adopting AI within cybersecurity practice? Jason, you wanna go first?
Yeah, I can't underscore this enough, and it's going to sound like we're repeating ourselves because we are, but this is literally the most important thing, is you have got to get very, very clear on what the problem is, what's the use case that you're trying to solve for, and make the determination early on, is AI, in whatever way you want to define that, the right solution for it? Because today, it's a lot of AI solutions chasing a problem, and you are going to spend more time trying to get this thing forced into solving the problem when some basic automation might have solved it for you. And so I think there are some very good wins and documentation, especially as we talked about, where you can get an easy win with not a lot of effort. And so it's look for those quick wins to really get yourself in a position where you can highlight that you're saving the team time, because that's the type of thing that's going to help just lift that burden off the team and ultimately get them where they're in a better position to avoid the burnout.
Joe, anything to add to that?
What's old is new again. When cloud was the big new fad, everyone wanted to just forklift their IaaS workloads up into AWS. And you got to watch out for resume-driven development. And why are we doing that? Is there actually a benefit? And it's no different here. Why should we adopt AI? Is there actually a benefit, or is it just some engineers want to kind of build their resume?
Whoa, sorry, we hit the end there. That was a good kind of mic drop there, I think, for the end though. So very good. This was a great discussion. Joe, Jason, really appreciate you both hopping on today to talk about this important topic. If anybody in the audience has any questions, whether watching live or on demand, if you watch the recording, send them over to us. You can catch Expel on the LinkedIn machine, or you can go to our website to the contact page. You can check out both Joe and Jason on LinkedIn. They're both good follows. Would highly recommend following them. And regarding the on-demand stuff, check out our YouTube page, youtube.com/@ExpelSecurity. This recording will be there on demand. Lots of other video content coming out over there. Highly recommend checking that out. Joe, Jason, appreciate you both. And who knows, maybe I'll come knocking again at some point in the future. So,
yeah, thanks for having us.
Cheers.